Good evening. Welcome to the June 17th Village Board Legislative Session. This meeting is now called to order, and we are very pleased tonight to have a special presentation with some special guests. I would like to welcome the Ossining High School graduating class president and vice president, Tia Lima and Fanny Zhang. Welcome, ladies. We have a proclamation for you. It's been quite a year, and so I will actually read this proclamation because it's all about you and your class. And then afterwards, I'm going to invite the class president and vice president to share any thoughts that they have with our community about what their class is experiencing on this most unusual year for them to be graduating. So, whereas the Ossining High School graduating class of 2020 has had to bear something unlike any other class in memory, coronavirus, COVID-19. And whereas senior year in high school is normally filled with fond and special memories, as students move on to bigger and better things, graduates look toward their future with some uncertainty, but with their sights set high with goals and achievements still to be met. And whereas the Ossining High School class of 2020 will not have the opportunity to say goodbye to their teachers, play that last sports game as a senior, have a senior awards dinner or scholarship award dinner, or dance at their prom. They will forever be known as the class who graduated during the pandemic. This unprecedented experience can serve to strengthen their determination and ability to adapt, make them not be afraid of change, and to face challenges head on. These skills will help them in the years ahead. And whereas this mysterious virus came upon us so quickly and changed our lives, we are hopeful that these bright young adults will have the fortitude to focus beyond this challenging spring and see how they have been made stronger, learn to persevere, and overcome a stumbling block on their journey. Now, therefore, I, Victoria Garrity, Mayor of the Village of Ossining, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, do hereby congratulate the Ossining High School class of 2020 and proclaim Friday, June 19th, 2020 as Ossining High School's class of 2020 day in the Village of Ossining, and urge all our residents and merchants to join us in honoring them. So, with that, I would like to welcome Tia. And Fanny, would you like to say something about your class, what you've been experiencing, what you have planned for the next few days?
Fanny, you want to start or you want me to start?
Okay, I'll start. So I would like to say that, like, it has been challenging for everyone, and this is definitely not the year that our grade has expected. I mean, obviously, like you went over, we really looking forward to a lot of the great traditions as seniors. But really, this entire situation has shown us how strong we are as individuals, and of course, as a community. The support from the community has been really amazing. And, you know, all the teachers, the administrators, the staff, and, you know, even our neighbors, they've just been so kind and so sympathetic to really what has been going on. I think that really does help a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, just going around, driving around Ossining, seeing all the signs that the PTA and everyone has put together, like supporting the seniors. It's just really nice to see how the community is like standing by with us and we're not alone. And I think I'm speaking for all of 2020, it just made us feel a lot better about the whole situation. And we'll actually be having a virtual graduation, like a recording on Saturday at 2. They recorded all of us walking across the stage already. So on Saturday, they'll air that and we could all watch it together and hopefully it'll be great.
That sounds great. And can anybody watch your graduation on the 20th? Will we go to the school's website or the school's social media?
Yeah, I think they're streaming it. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, then the whole community can join in your celebration in a virtual way. That's really special. And I guess many of us will get to watch you on the parade route, right, Chief? That's happening on Friday, right?
Yep.
And that has been released. It kind of goes through many of our main roads. Thank you, Chief, for unmuting.
I was going to bring that up under my organizational or under my administrative report, but Friday at noon we'll be kicking off the senior parade, and we're going to be posting that map tomorrow morning.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And thank you so much Tia and Fanny for joining us this evening and for being part of the special presentation to your class. And it certainly is a very memorable year for the whole world, and it was going to be a special year for you anyway. So you will certainly be remembered as a unique class in the history of Ossining High School. I'd like to invite my colleagues on the village board if they'd like to offer any wishes to you. Now would be a great time.
Yeah, I would just like to congratulate them. It was a tough year, and you guys showed how strong you are and how resilient you are. So I wish you guys the best of luck in the future, and have a good time on Friday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Really proud of you. It is really an accomplishment to make it to this point. Graduating is no joke. You know what you went through. And although this has certainly been a strange year, the reality is that you are called to this moment. You are called to step up, to serve, and help the world. The world needed it before, but God does it need it now. And I'm really grateful that we have you all leading the way. I'll be here in the back supporting you as I can. Go on, go and get them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo what my colleagues just said is congratulations, not just to you, but to everybody that's actually graduating in 2020. Is going to be definitely something to remember, and not just for you guys, but for all of us, I think. And, you know, in a few years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to say, that was one of the most interesting years that we ever had. And that was something for, you know, to tell. It's going to be a story to tell to our kids, you know, to our grandkids, for some of us. But yes, you guys done an amazing work, and everybody in the community is behind you guys. So make us proud. So thank you for everything that you guys have accomplished. And I'm looking forward to see what else you guys do in the years to come. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward, should we start the roll call? Are we at that point? Across the board? Hello?
I hear you.
Oh, thank you. Trustee Fritchie?
I am present.
Trustee Lopez?
Present.
Trustee Casada?
Present. And sorry to interrupt, Jamie, Rika is on the attendee side. Would you mind bringing, yeah. Sorry about that.
And then also Fanny and Tia, you no longer have to stay on if you wanted to leave.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, ladies.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Trustee Levin?
I'm here. Jamie, am I on?
Yes.
And Mayor Garrity? I lost Mayor Garrity.
No, we can hear you, Sue.
Oh, Mayor Garrity?
Oh, maybe only I can hear you, Sue.
Oh.
Yeah, no, we can all hear.
We can
I don't
all
know.
hear.
I can hear you. Victoria, I think she's calling you.
She doesn't have her mute on. So.
Maybe
She's not muted.
She's not muted. I don't know. She was having technical difficulties earlier. I must tap the screen. Victoria.
Yeah, knock on it.
Victoria. Mayor. Mayor Garrity. Hello.
Put up a sign. You have a little sign?
She's not looking up.
Wait, text her.
I'm texting her.
I wanted, Eric is on the attendee list. Can you tap her?
She says tech difficulties.
Oh, okay. So she's here.
So shall we move forward?
Okay, you
test
can
if she
move
is here.
forward. I'll do it until she gets back on.
Okay. We had the special presentation, administrative reports. Village Manager Karen DeTore.
There may be announcements first.
Yeah, I was going to say we skipped the Board of Trustees announcements.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
I just thought that whole presentation.
Anybody have any announcements?
I'll begin. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all, as always. So I'll start with the census. We're at 59.1 in our response rate. So what I would love to see is in the rest of the month here in June, before we hit July, let's cross that 60%. Let's move way past where we were 10 years ago and get the response rate up. So I'm going to be working with folks to make a concerted effort to get the response rate, not only where it was 10 years ago, but way past that, because the more folks that respond to the census, the more money we have for our communities. And that is incredibly important. If you want great roads, if you want great schools, if you want businesses to be able to come here to Ossining, respond to the census, that is the move. It just takes a few minutes, and there's a lot of easy ways to do it: online, on the phone, through the mail. Next is the comprehensive plan. Trustee Casada and I were meeting last night with the comprehensive plan steering committee, and we are moving now into the waterfront. So we had a lot of conversations about imagining what the waterfront could look like, and that not only incorporated limitations that are going to be put on the waterfront due to climate change. We know that by 2050 there will already be changes. By 2080 there will be very noticeable changes to our waterfront given different projections. And so looking at those potential issues, what can we do to reimagine our waterfront in terms of entertainment, in terms of housing, in terms of businesses, in terms of transportation? And it was really an interesting conversation where we talked about Crawbucky and ways to connect Crawbucky. We talked about the walkway and what are the ways in which we can connect Ossining to different communities. It's a conversation that I think is long overdue, and I would love to see even more members of our community get into it as we get into these different parts of the comprehensive plan. We're going to be moving now. We have already started actually with subcommittees meeting. These are groups that are focused on specific areas of the comprehensive plan: transportation or housing, business, etc. And those are really, really helpful focus groups to get us information that we need in order to make a really well-informed comprehensive plan. We also started talking about what the next step in community engagement looks like. You can already go on the website, you go on the village's website, and you can be linked there, or you can just go to ossiningtomorrow.com and check out the comprehensive plan there. The ideas wall, the survey that's going to be coming up, there's going to be a number of ways for folks to be engaged. You're going to be hearing a lot more details, but we just started previewing what those look like. Our next meeting is going to be in July, the 21st of July, and in between now and then, they'll be working on this chapter on the waterfront, already having completed the draft for land use and zoning. So that is really exciting. The last thing that I want to say is just a short commentary on the moment. So this is something that I've been really thinking about what is the most thoughtful way of talking about this issue. And the issue is, we've talked a little bit about coronavirus, something which, by the way, we should not forget. Just because the weather is warmer and we're moving into advanced phases, that doesn't mean that we should take our foot off the pedal in terms of following the guidelines. I don't need to tell you folks, I'm telling the folks who don't know, continue to follow the guidelines, please, because that is a way in which we can continue the progress that we are making. The other big thing is the unrest we are seeing throughout our country, and a lot of the reflection that is being made about policing and the way that we can be improving our policing, and in turn, just prejudice and racism writ large, as individuals and as organizations, companies, agencies, etc. And one of the things that has really struck me is that I want to make sure that I am being as thoughtful as possible about this topic, because it's one of the things that I've actually appreciated the most about being involved with local government, is really getting to know the details about how things happen. And when we are talking about large movements like defund the police, for example, what does that look like in a place like Ossining? That is a complicated question in general, but in Ossining specifically, it's complicated. And again, this is all just my opinion, because you have a police chief in Kevin Sylvester that has done a very strong job of himself getting trained, and then in turn bringing training to our officers, whether it's bias training or use of force training, bringing body cams, and now we even have a better version of body cameras on all officers, and the many other things that you'll be hearing, I'm sure, from other folks, including the chief, in terms of the specific responses. But my feeling is more in general. I recognize the effort that goes into doing community policing right, into truly being servants and guardians of our community in a way that is done in partnership with the community. And when officers are doing things that are wrong, I am vehemently for calling that out, calling out bad behavior, whether it's a mistake of the head or of the heart. We need to ensure that we are holding these folks to the highest degree possible in terms of the bar of behavior that we expect. But at the same time, if they're doing right, I also want to name that, because it's not an easy job to be a police officer. I recognize that, and I'm grateful for the folks that are stepping up to serve our community, being led by Chief Sylvester. So I want to express the really, like, it's very conflicting, because you see what's happening in our country and use of force cases, and it's just heartbreaking. And at the same time, I turn around and I look in our community, and I see so much good as well. And so I want to highlight the good that is happening in our community as much as we call out the changes that we need to make. And I'm grateful for the service of the folks that are in uniform, but I'm also grateful for the folks that are calling out bad behavior. So that is it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And those are my words.
Thank you, Trustee Lopez, and thank you all for filling in the blanks when I was having some technical difficulties. Much appreciated. Who would like to go next? I'm sure that others have comments and updates for us.
Yeah, if I may, I just want to kind of piggyback in what Trustee Lopez just mentioned in regards to the census. Not the census, but the comp plan itself. I apologize. I know the census.
You can talk about the census too if you want to.
No. That's yours. That's all you, man. But you know, if I think this is a critical point, obviously, that we are moving forward, and that will represent the vision of our community. And for people that actually may just want to catch up with what has been going on, you know, one thing that that would be valuable for them is to actually, we have videos, we videotape all our Zoom calls. So they'll be able to go back and actually see the discussions that we are having. And if members of the community that are participate or want to participate, you know, either just through by watching, they can obviously ask questions while we go through the meeting process, and they can get information that way as well, not just going to the website. And they can reach out to us. You know, they can reach out, and if they want to get involved, if they just want to be involved in one project, I think it's always useful to get different perspectives of all our members in our community. So I just wanted to add that to the mix of that conversation for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Manny. Does anybody else have any comments or questions that we haven't heard from yet tonight?
I'm good.
Rika.
Thanks. No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, then I'll just add to a little bit of what my colleagues have already brought up. And thank you very much. Trustees Lopez and Quesada are the two Village Board of Trustee members who participate directly in the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. The way that process works is the Steering Committee, which is a group of 9 people, the 2 trustees, a member of the Planning Board, and then up to 6 community members. And I want to announce the newest appointment to the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, who joined, I believe he joined last night's meeting. Yes, okay, Pat Yost, who had been observing some of the other meetings, and we're very pleased to have him there. Pat has served for many years on the Rec Advisory Board, so Rika knows him and his dedication to our community well. I know him through baseball because he has been one of the organizers of the local baseball league for many years, and so I know him just in that regard primarily. And we also have a conversation to be had about if we want to expand the membership of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. There's so much going on right now. We have had some interest from other folks, so that's something that my colleagues and I can take up to officially pass a resolution to be able to do that, because I know we have at least one other person who had expressed interest and might be a great addition. So when we can be flexible and involve more people, we do. The actual work of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee is for folks who are doing it full on. It's really quite a bit of work, and it's quite in depth, and you get to understand an awful lot about municipal planning and about our community, its history, and its future. Everybody can participate in a very convenient way, and thank you to my colleagues for pointing out the ways that folks can get involved online for now, and there's going to be even more opportunities for public engagement on the comprehensive plan for many months to come, maybe even Sunday when we'll all be in a room together. And I wanted to talk about our Civilian Police Complaint Review Board and just give folks a little update. We appointed 3 new members just earlier this year, and they were scheduled to meet in March. The whole world kind of stopped for a little while. They did meet on Monday evening. Thank you very much, Chief Sylvester, for meeting with them and talking with them, especially at this unusual time. We have a number of new members on the board, and obviously there's so much unrest and so many questions about law enforcement. And in fact, we have been charged by the governor in a recent executive order, I believe it was Executive Order 203, to undertake a review of police procedures and how our community law enforcement engages with the community. And it's not exactly clear yet exactly what the Board of Trustees is going to be guiding, but we have a process to undertake, and at the end of it, there will be a plan, and it should all come together within the next 9 months. And we're very fortunate to have a Civilian Police Complaint Review Board in place. They have some training to be doing and getting underway, and I think they can be their role in this whole picture of how does law enforcement function and function optimally in our community and for our community. Something we're very pleased that they are up for helping us do a great job with addressing that need. I did want to make mention of the statement that came out from the trustees and I on Monday. And in that letter, there were a few recommendations. And I think I will just highlight them because this is a moment where people care very deeply about their community and about figuring out what each of us can do to actively dismantle institutional racism. And there are things that can be done right here in our community. It's a very daunting task when you think about the nation and the world. It's a little more manageable when you think of the progress that can be made right here in your own village and what you could actually do. So the 4 bullet points that we have, actually a couple of them have even been referenced already. One of them is respond to the census. It's every resident that is counted means that we are better represented at higher levels of government, and it means that we are better able to access funding and to receive funding from federal, state, and county governments. That is critically important for us to be able to provide all of the services that are so important to keeping our community safe, to providing great programming for young people, and to be keeping the community to be able to keep our taxes down so that it can be more affordable for us all. Vote every chance you get. Right now, we are in the midst of the primary elections. Early voting is going on for anyone in the Democratic or Republican primaries. And forgive me, I misspoke a number of weeks ago. I did not realize there was a Republican primary in a couple of races. I believe that is the case for the congressional race and for the Senate race. So if you are a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, you can vote early voting right now at the community center. The hours differ a little bit each day, but that is from now through Sunday. Monday, there's no place to vote in person. Tuesday, which is primary election day, June 23rd this year, there are 2 locations where you can vote, either the community center or Roosevelt School. And if you're a registered voter, you should have gotten a postcard indicating where you need to vote if you want to vote in person on the 23rd. If you already applied for an absentee ballot, then you don't need to go anywhere. Just go ahead and pop that in the mail. As long as it's postmarked by June 23rd, your vote will be counted. So then the next thing on our list is related to the comprehensive plan. So we talked a fair amount about that. I won't belabor it, other than to say that right now there's a really cool thing up there. There's an ideas wall, and people have started putting up their ideas about what they think should be priorities in the comprehensive plan. And somebody will put up an idea, and then a bunch of people will comment on it. And it's a conversation just about the comprehensive plan. Well, really just about our community, and then how those opinions and ideas might impact the decisions that we make and the directions and what we prioritize in the comprehensive plan. So please do make your voice heard in that way for now. And the last thing is take the police test. And I don't know if the chief is planning to speak about it tonight, but the police test is given only once every 4 years, and this is the year. When we hire new officers, we hire locally, we hire people who live in Ossining, and we hire from a list of people who have taken the test and scored well. So we're limited in who we can hire by who takes the test. So we really encourage people to take the test so we have a bigger pool of people to hire from. And that's the best way for us to get a force that continues to more accurately reflect the diversity of our community. So if you are interested in following links for any of those suggestions, it is on the Village website in that statement that we provided earlier this week. And I remember exactly, it was something about dismantling racism right here at home was the name of it, I believe. And there's links to all of that, including information about the police test. And I know that there are so many people who are really eager to make a difference and looking for a tangible way to do it. And those are just some of our suggestions. And we are grateful to everyone who has reached out to us and asked, where do we stand on use of force policies like those that have been highlighted in the 8 Can't Wait. And I'm very grateful that our chief was already working on that last week. So he was able to share that on Friday, and we were able to reinforce that on Monday, that all of those recommendations are now formally in our policies, and that aligns with the training and practices that were already in place for our department, which is good news for Ossining. So thank you very much, Chief, for being at the forefront of making smart, thoughtful policing decisions from your position as the leader of that department, and for always looking for great advice and resources, just as you did when you attended the 21st Century Policing training a few years ago under the President Obama administration. Those are all really emblematic of the community's commitment to community policing. So thank you for that, and we look forward to working with you and many, many stakeholders throughout the community in the coming months as we review our much more than just use of force practices, so much more. And we look forward to being able to come up with a great plan and a report to respond to the governor's request for this to happen. And it's going to be a collaboration like everything else we do in this community. So thanks so much for that. And I will turn it over to our clerk or manager, because I don't see our clerk.
I'm right here at the top.
Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Administrative reports, Village Manager Karen Tutor.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I want to make my report brief. We have a long meeting and a wetlands update, but I do want to ask Jamie Hoffman to share the screen for a minute, because we had a banner put up today and I want to make sure everybody sees it. So we're making Ossining count. We're really happy on the progress that we're making on the census during this very, very difficult time. And we are gearing up for as close to 100% as possible. So let's break those records and make sure that Ossining counts. Thank you very much, Jamie, for all your work in organizing this and coordinating it, and your efforts to get the word out about the census, and your very talented photography. Thank you. And amongst the other news about town, we've gotten some paving. So Revolutionary Road has been paved between Route 9 and right near Sparta. So that section has been paved. We have Dewar Circle, which is the intersection of Brandreth and Broadway, paved, and we're redoing our historic Dewar Circle and creating improving the tree well there. And also we're going to be putting up 2 stop signs to do some traffic calming in that area. It's been an area where there's been some fender benders, and we wanted to make it safer. We also incorporated ADA sidewalks. So thank you to Paul Fraioli and all of our DPW staff that made that possible. With that, we don't really have too much more to report other than we are working busily to get our summer programs up and running. You'll be hearing about those soon. We're getting our parks ready, our ball fields, everything ready for phase 3 and phase 4. And we'll be also starting our youth leadership program with working with the school district and our community partners starting next week to start recruiting kids in middle school and high school for the program. And other than that, we are just helping businesses as they transition, helping to support the community. Our food distribution system continues, and we're just trying to take each day as it comes and make sure that we do as much as we can for everybody here. So thank you to the staff, thank you to the board, thank you for everybody who's helping to make things easier in our community. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Planning, Jaime Martinez, to speak about, give a brief update on our wetlands ordinance.
Hello, Mayor, Board of Trustees. Thank you for taking the time out to hear about the wetlands ordinance that we've been working on for the past few weeks. I want to be as brief as possible. I know there's a very long agenda. Today is just an update, so there's no presentation. But the quick notes are that, essentially over the past 2 weeks, staff in conjunction with our engineering consultant and our land use council have worked on finalizing the language for any issues of inconsistency with the code as it pertains to building permitting and everything else. And just trying to ensure that the final ordinance is in line with the intentions of the board. We're right now working on setting up a final table read of the legislation with the chair of the EAC or anyone that they wanted to designate to do that, just to ensure that it kind of conforms with the EAC's expectations of this wetlands ordinance. And we are working on having a final draft of the legislation to the board at the next legislative session. So that is the intent at this point, is to have it whenever the next legislative session is. I'm not sure if that's 2 weeks or 3 weeks away, but that would be the goal.
2 weeks, right? It's every other week, so
so
we'll have it in 2 weeks. That's great.
Great, thank you.
Any questions?
I do. Thank you, Jaime. So you'll have that, but in between that, are you going to have any presentations for the work session for us to discuss? More like the implementation and everything else that has been going on, or is how's that going to work, I guess? And I don't want to take too much time, but No,
that's a good question. So the goal is to try to get this, the meeting with the EAC set up. We have it penciled in for next week, Wednesday. So I think that we would have the final draft of the text, and we can, depending on how y'all feel, we can certainly do a presentation on where the final text is. At that point, I think we have a pretty good sense of where everybody wants to go. But I could certainly do a presentation. It's the decision of this board whether they'd like me to do a final presentation on the text and any changes from where we were at the beginning.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels, but obviously, we can use 2 weeks from now to have a discussion, or we can use a work session to have a discussion. But I'll leave that up to the rest of the board to do that.
Yeah, I think that's normal. It's just that we've had the conversations. I think what Jaime is doing is just circling back to the chair or anybody else on the EAC. There were just some minor points, if you recall, if you build a shed, if you do this, for some of the nuances. So most of the language was written in, and then we gave input. So we've done it at one work session. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other, but I'd like to see the legislation ready for us at the next legislative session. So maybe as you get a little closer, maybe by the end of this week, or if you speak to Erica, Jaime, you'll say, yeah, I think we need to do in the work session. I mean, I'm okay either way. I'm fine, because I thought we actually did a lot of discussion about it. And there's going to be public hearing, I mean, it's right. So there'll be other opportunity. So either way is fine.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing that would prevent me from saying absolutely yes, I'm ready to come next week to talk about this, is that the scheduling of the the meeting with the EAC along with Keller Sessions and all the other staff that's involved. So because there are so many people that have to be on that phone call, just scheduling it any earlier than next Wednesday may be a little challenging, which means that I will have feedback that day, but I don't know if I'll have enough time to finalize a presentation. I can certainly attempt to, but I don't want to make any promises. I know I'll be ready in 2 weeks.
But in 2 weeks,
That's
though,
the
you're
only-
going to have the legislation.
Yeah.
I mean, the attorney's going to look at it. Counsel's going to look. Everybody's looking at it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
We can always discuss that before the voting, if anything. But Stuart, correct me if I'm wrong. So we're going to go to we'll pass a resolution, but then we have to go to public comments, correct? And are we doing, because we haven't done.
Well, I want to clarify. You will get the legislation on that meeting, but you still have to go through seeker.
Right.
So there's a process. So it's not like if we bring it in 2 weeks, it doesn't mean that anything at that point changes. We still have to get the prepare the EAF from seeker. You still have to declare lead agency. You still have to have a public hearing. So there's a couple of items that go. It's not going to be like right away.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but that's what I'm saying, because we haven't held a public meeting in regards to any of the, we haven't passed a law in a while because of what we're going through. So I think that's something else that we kind of have to decide in how we're going to do this as well. So that's why I was referring back to Stuart to kind of guide us on this process at this point.
Well, this particular legislation, Trustee Quezada, until seeker is completed, you can't vote to approve any legislation. What you would probably want to do is to have the public hearing on the declaration, positive or negative, at the same time as you have the hearing on the proposed local law, to do that. In terms of when you could have a public hearing, currently, unless they are there is an imminent need, public hearings are not to be held. That's sort of, and that restriction goes until the 6th of July. We'll have to see what the governor does at that point. After that, even if they are started to be allowed in more public settings, there will still be issues with regard to social distancing and issues that relate to that. But specifically with regard to this legislation, one, it has to be before the board for, I believe, 7 days. It sort of, in essence, has to be published before the board. But also, it has to complete through seeker. So that has to happen before there can be any hearing and vote by this board.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks, Stuart.
There is just one more thing that came up for, I guess, either Karen or Victoria. I think that when the doors open, we better be prepared just from a people management point of view, that while we normally meet in one place, I don't know if we need to move to the community center for the next few months and start booking that room, because we have to sit 6 feet apart, even if no one shows up. We need, if the public doesn't physically attend, and we're gonna, we should be prepared for that. Maybe you're already prepared for it and you've already thought about all of that. But the courtroom itself with 6 feet apart, I'm not even sure how we would set that up in there, given the day. So I don't think we need to solve it today.
Right. That's what we're considering, and it's something that we have to work out with program scheduling, which I think at this point won't be too challenging. But
in the evenings, yeah.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yes.
It just occurred to me, but I'm sure you've thought about it already.
We have thought about it. Thank you. We think about a lot of these things, and then we.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything more from the management's office? All right. Madam
No,
Clerk.
I'm sorry, I was muted. No.
Okay.
Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Clerk Donnelly. Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. It's been a busy couple of weeks. additional executive orders, both with regard to the police and with regard to the pandemic, have been coming down from the governor. But before I get into those two a little bit, I do want to particularly thank Joe Agustinelli, Carlo Valente, Jaime Martinez, Paul Fraioli. We have been really moving to get many of our businesses who want outdoor dining to get them open, consistent with the Phase 2 guidelines and consistent with the village code. As most of you folks are aware, the village manager signed a local emergency order which suspended portions of permit process somewhat easier. That, just so the board is aware, that suspension, which was renewed effective today, has been approved by the New York State Department of Health, and we do not have to go back to the DOH for further approvals with regard to that particular legislation or that particular suspension. But Carlo and Joe were at numerous venues around the village, making sure that there was compliance with all the guidelines. And also, I don't want to forget Martha and Sue in the clerk's office, because those applications came there. They were making sure that all the necessary hold harmless agreements, insurance policies, and all other documents had been received. And we have been able to accommodate all, anyone who put it before. I think there may be one or two restaurants where there's a hold harmless outstanding, but village staff has really done wonderful work. Jaime went out and met with these owners before they started putting out their tables and chairs. And even those who put them out without permits have since come in and are in the process of getting permits or have already received permits. So I do want to thank all of those folks, because we got those guidelines from the state fairly just days before Phase 2 began. And luckily, we do have the Phase 3 guidelines already. So we're able to start that. Many of the guidelines are similar to what it is on Phase 2, but as relates to dining establishments, there will be you'll be permitted to do in-location dining at a 50% capacity, which does not include staff. But again, there have to be masks, there has to be social distancing, tables have to be 6 feet apart, and all that has to be followed. But again, thank you to all the folks in building and planning who have particularly made this happen for those businesses, some of which had not applied for sidewalk cafe permits before, but now have them and are able to conduct some of their operations. With regard to the executive orders relating to the pandemic, the current suspension of the public officers law relating to the meetings that we hold, the open meetings law, continues through the 6th of July. There has been no indication thus far that that will not be extended past July 6th, even for those regions that will either be in Phase 3 or potentially Phase 4 by that time. But we will await further word from the governor's office. I would expect that we would hear something probably pretty close to the 6th of July before we have any further information. But as I said before, there is no doubt that social distancing is required. I should point out that while the requirements of the open meetings law have been suspended, that actually does not mean that you cannot have an in-person meeting. It simply means that if you're having it, you need to be 6 feet apart, and your folks in the public would have to also socially distance or be made, have the availability to obviously watch and participate online. Recent executive orders have extended some of the dates. The governor has for those businesses and localities entering Phase 3, and I believe our region would be scheduled for that next week. The public gatherings can go up to 25. And there are also rules and regulations with regard to salons, tattoo parlors, piercing studios, and the requirements that they have to follow. In addition, as the mayor referenced, there was a recent executive order issued by the governor, Executive Order 203, entitled New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. It does require all localities with police departments to essentially adopt a plan, and that plan, as to quote from it, will consider evidence-based policing strategies, including but not limited to use of force policies, procedural justice, any studies addressing systemic racial bias or racial justice in policing, implicit bias awareness training, de-escalation training and practices, law enforcement assisted diversion programs, restorative justice practices, community-based outreach and conflict resolution, problem-oriented policing, hotspots policing, focused deterrence, crime prevention through environmental design, violence prevention, and reduced intervention, and model policies and guidelines. There ought to be meetings of stakeholders, which would include folks from the police and obviously from the public, including from the courts if necessary, and from the government. And a plan is to be presented to the Board of Trustees and to be approved on or before April 1, and certification of that resolution is to be provided to the State Division of the Budget, because if that is not done, those municipalities may lose their state funding. In addition to the executive order, the governor, over the past approximately 10 days, has been busy signing legislation with regard to the police. You may have heard of many of these, but I'll just go through some of them briefly. One is that it repeals Section 50A, which did limit disclosure of personnel records with regard to police officers. Those records, with minor exceptions, now are subject to Freedom of Information law requests, and that law went into effect immediately. So there is no wait period, and those can start coming in. The governor also signed legislation creating an Office of Special Investigations, working through the Attorney General's office. That office would be authorized to investigate and, if warranted, prosecute any alleged criminal offense or offenses committed by a person who is a police officer concerning the death or investigation of the death of any person where such death resulted from or potentially resulted from any encounter with such police officer, whether or not the person was in custody. And that is another local law, and that becomes effective on the 30th day after it was signed. It was signed on June 12th, so that would become effective on July 12th. The governor also signed a law which deals with recording police activities, essentially what it says is that a person not under arrest or in the custody of a law enforcement official has the right to record law enforcement activity and to maintain custody and control of that recording, and of any property or instruments used by that person to record law enforcement activities, provided, however, that a person in custody or under arrest does not by that status alone forfeit the right to have the recording property or equipment maintained and returned to them. A violation of this would result in a civil private right of action by the person who is involved, and that action could be brought for up to 3 years. And could it result in a recovery of attorney's fees, which under state law is fairly unusual. That law becomes effective also 30 days after it was signed. It was signed on June 14th, so that would be effective July 14th. The governor also signed into law what is known by the title of the Eric Garner Anti-Chokehold Act, which adds a section to the penal law, new section 121.13a, which is for aggravated strangulation. And that is a Class C felony, and a person is guilty of aggravated strangulation when being a police officer. And I'll just go on here. he or she commits the crime of criminal obstruction of breathing or blood circulation as defined by statute, or uses a chokehold or similar restraint, as is also defined in New York's executive law, and thereby causes serious physical injury or death to another person. That goes into effect immediately. So that is in fact the law in this state as we speak. In addition, the governor signed another law with regard to certain records that have to now be kept by the court system. The governor also signed a law which will make it a violation of the civil rights law if someone summons a police officer or peace officer without reason to suspect a violation of the penal law or any other criminal conduct or an imminent threat to a person or property. As some of you may recall, recently there was the case of a Ms. Cooper who was in Central Park and called the police on 911 to report a black male, also with the last name Cooper. That individual was actually there taking photos of birds and bird watching. And so that is now, made part of New York's civil rights law. And that law also takes effect immediately. That can result, if there is a violation, a civil action or proceeding may be maintained by the individual or group of individuals for injunctive relief or any other relief as deemed appropriate. And that, again, was signed into law. The governor also signed into law recently, actually on June the 15th, a revision also to the civil rights law, which requires that when a person is under arrest or otherwise in the custody of a police officer, they are entitled to medical attention for either medical or mental health needs, and that must be provided. And if not done, that can also provide a cause of action against the officer's representative, which presumably would be the village or any municipality. And that could also result in an award of monetary damages and attorney's fees if so awarded. That statute is also in effect immediately. Today, the governor also signed legislation requiring that the state police wear body cameras, which was something that was not required prior to today. And that is effective. Actually, that law will become effective April 1, 2021. So that is not yet in effect to obviously allow the state to go out and get the body cameras. And finally, the governor signed a revision to the executive law, which will require any law enforcement officer who discharges his or her weapon while on duty or off duty under circumstances where a person could be struck by a bullet, including circumstances where the weapon is discharged in the direction of a person, that must be reported within 6 hours of the occurrence, and a written report must be provided within 48 hours of the occurrence. That is also effective immediately. I know that the chief has promulgated some new rules and regulations for the department, which are consistent with many of the changes that have been signed into law by the governor. But those, the ones I have indicated to you, are now signed. There are a few others that remain in committee and have not yet made it to the governor's desk, or if they're in committee, have not been voted on. But those are the extent of those provisions before the governor. So a busy 2 weeks by the legislature on these acts, and busy in terms of both the executive orders and the village in attempting to assist local businesses in being able to reopen and comply with the requirements of phase 2 and phase 3. If folks are interested in knowing specifically what the requirements are with regard to phase 2 and phase 3, they can go to forward.ny.gov, which is the New York Moving Forward site. And that will have all the guidelines that are there, including a box which will allow you to determine if your business is one that is allowed to open. It is by business and by county. So you'll be able to figure it out, because obviously the phases that we're in go according to the region that you are in. The most important thing I can say, just finishing off, is regardless of the phase we are in, and right now we're in phase 2, social distancing, mask wearing is still essential. Washing hands remains essential. If you're in a restaurant, outdoor dining or indoor dining, the only time you are not to wear a mask is when you're actually sitting at the table and being served. If you are standing and waiting, you must be in a mask. Your serving staff will be in masks at all times. So be considerate as a patron of them, because they are being considerate of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that detailed report, Stuart. And also, I'm aware that there have been a number of restaurants and bars around the state that have seen very hefty fines and even lost their liquor licenses. So I hope that all of the patrons can help keep our businesses in compliance by following all the regulations that were just detailed for you by our Corporation Counsel, particularly staying at the tables. And we just depend on our restaurants to know the rules and to follow them with how they set up their tables and all of their barriers and safety precautions and spacing. Madam Clerk.
Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board. We'll start with Stuart's stuff there. That was an awful lot of legislation that was pushed through fast and furious. Proud to report that we are fully compliant with everything that's been signed, and even that which is not effective to this date. For instance, the demand for medical attention has already been added into our handling of prisoners. We are already preparing for the next round of legislation, although we've had conversations with our state legislators. There are some concerns about how that legislation is being presented. For instance, there's the next bill up is that they're going to attempt to track the races, genders, religions of people that may be stopped by the police. And we have questions as to how that data is supposed to be collected, and that has yet to be determined. One suggestion is that we should assume it, and that is an awfully dangerous game to play. So we're hopeful that the legislature in all of their wisdom can come up with a functional solution for how to do those things if in fact that's what they set out to do. But what we did last week, we took all of the things that we're already doing and have been training and has been documented within our procedures for many, many years, and we put them into one concise use of force policy in order to comply with the 8 Can't Wait campaign. Not necessarily because our job wasn't in compliance with all of those things, but because we wanted to have it in one individual place so that people can see it, that it can be known to everybody in the department that those requirements do exist within our department. But I can tell you that many of the things contained in there were met or exceeded already by our department. For instance, not necessarily with the 8 Can't Wait, but when you talk about the new executive order that says you have to report a discharge of your weapon within 6 hours, for the last 20 years, ours has said it has to be reported immediately. So we still have immediately. We're going to exceed that standard. So that's 8 Can't Wait. In terms of the Reinventing Police, our department's already started to examine the things that the governor's asked for. I think we're in a more challenging position than most communities because we do so many of these things, and yet we're still tasked with coming up with a plan on how to show that we're doing different things or new things. We've worn body cams for many years. You can see a story about us on News 12 today. Our use of force policies are up to date. That story was out a couple days ago on News 12. So, we have some things certainly we can always improve on, and there's always things we can add. But I think this is a much easier task when you have nothing done and you're starting from fresh than to try and explain things you're already doing in a new way. So we're up for that challenge and we're looking forward to it. We've already compiled a list of people that we're going to recommend be included based on the requirements that the governor put out, and we'll be sending it over to the board shortly. The village manager had mentioned the paving project on Brandreth Street and Broadway. That was as a result of complaints of traffic and data showing that there were increased accidents in that location. We're going to be doing some messaging over the next couple of weeks before those signs are adopted or are placed out and unveiled, but to let people know that those new stop signs do in fact exist. They will not be enforced until they become effective. I just wanted to quickly comment on Resolution C. I had asked the board to relieve Officer Pasquale Santucci of probation so that he can have the opportunity to compete for the sergeant's exam this summer or fall, as that may be. He's in the unique position of having been a police officer for much longer than is required in order to complete your probation or compete for this exam. However, he's changed jobs a couple of times, and that placed him back on probation. You may remember Officer Santucci from the April 2015 incident where he had saved a couple of people from a carbon monoxide emergency. It was one of the early cases of body-worn video showing some really good police work, and that was covered nationally. So we're glad to have him here. He's been an exemplary employee. He's a leader among his peers, and I fully support him being relieved of probation so that he can have an opportunity to compete for that promotion. On Friday, we will help the Ossining Union Free School District with their senior parade. That should be a very, very large parade, a little different format this time than what we did with the teacher parade. That one tried to pass as many homes as we could. This one's going to stay more to main roads. We're going to publish that map on our Facebook page. It's currently on the school district's page. We wanted to use a cleaned up version of it. But that should be a really fun, large-scale event on Friday around noon. Should cause some traffic, but we're not expecting incredible delays since it's going to stay to main road. So we'll ask for, we'll do a lot of messaging on that. Just ask people to be patient. These young people have worked really hard to get to the point that they're at, and we really think that they deserve their moment. And since they weren't allowed to have their moment before, we're going to try and give them one now. So proud to be a part of that. To touch on the police exam, that should be coming up in the fall. We've not gotten a date for it yet. Typically, we get very last-minute notice about when that exam is coming up. We have agreements with both the Guardians Association, which is the Black Law Enforcement Association in Westchester County, and the Westchester Hispanic Law Enforcement Association to do targeted recruiting in order to obtain a more diverse population on our list this year. 4 years ago when we took this test, we did some recruiting and we were able to increase the number of applicants, or the number of people in fact took the test. However, we found that it didn't necessarily capture the diversity of our community or a real reflection of those that live here. So that is our initiative for the fall, is to make sure that we're making that exam and those applications available to as many people as possible in order to give us a better opportunity to hire those that best reflect our community and real top shelf candidates for this job, because it's a good job with great opportunities to serve your community in a really unique way, and something that we want people to be able to be proud of. So that's my report for the night. Oh, the CCRB, I'm sorry, I just wanted to comment on that really quickly. The new CCRB, as they've been reconstituted this year, they were on hold for a little while because of COVID-19. They had a Zoom meeting last night. We are planning our first of many, many, many training sessions for next Monday. They are going to be coming into the building, masks and social distancing appropriate, but we're looking forward to getting that started, and we're going to do everything we can to get them through the training as fast as possible, or most efficient manner possible, but still as thorough as possible, to make sure that they are fully trained and able to re-begin the good work of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. So they are a dedicated group. We had a great conversation last night, and they're really enthusiastic and ready to get going. So looking forward to getting them back up to full capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Great.
Madam Clerk.
Organizational announcements. Does anyone have an announcement to make on event related only and for 2 minutes in length?
I'll give folks another moment. I'm looking at the attendees list, and we do have a number of attendees this evening. It does not appear that anyone is raising their hand and asking to speak about an event. Going once. What? We do have one. We have one from someone who's, is this about an event that you want to speak about? All right, V269099, allowed to talk. There we go. Welcome. Can you identify yourself? And,
hi, Rebecca Beatty.
Hi, Rebecca. Did you want to speak to us about an event?
Yes, I just want to give everyone a reminder. Hello, good evening. My name is Rebecca Beatty, and I am a member of the Landlord-Tenant Relations Council. As a reminder, the council is available to assist in resolving landlord and tenant disputes. If anyone has any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact the Landlord-Tenant Relations at ltrc@villageofossining.org, or you can give us a call at 914-941-3554.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that you all put together a flyer recently that I believe has been shared in the web blast, and perhaps my colleagues and I can make sure that we also push that out again on our social media outlets to get the information out there so that folks know that you're there as a resource for landlords and tenants. Thank you so much for coming to the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Very informative today.
Oh, great. Well, stick around. We got hours to go.
Okay.
Are there any other people who have announcements? I'm not seeing anybody with their hand raised. Hold on one second. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, what's next?
Village Board resolutions. Visitors shall be accorded 1 4-minute opportunity to address all resolutions on the agenda this evening. Please give your name, preferably your address too, but your name will do when you start speaking. Thank you.
All right. I have the first hand that I saw go up was John Van Steen, so I'm going to allow him to talk. John Van Steen, if you can hear me, go ahead and unmute yourself. You have been
Can you
permitted
hear me?
to talk. Now I hear you. Welcome.
Okay.
You have 4 minutes beginning now.
The Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce would like to render an opinion regarding Village Board Resolution K, which of course is the agreement designating Wilder-Balter Partners as the preferred development. Madam Mayor and members of the board, more than a year ago, the Ossining Village Board began the process of examining the development possibilities for the former Department of Public Works site on Water Street. Not officially currently used by the village for anything other than an equipment and materials site, this brownfield parcel had been underutilized for several decades. The site was identified in Kevin Varka's housing needs assessment in 2017 as one that would enable the creation of a public-private partnership. As this was one of the few undeveloped parcels owned by the village, the board chose to take the opportunity to identify village goals and to issue an RFQ specifically tailored to those goals. By utilizing the RFQ process rather than the RFP, the village was able to define the project rather than have the developer define the project for the village. The goals were identified were that the project, 1, fit the defined use for the property in the comprehensive plan, 2, reclaim the brownfield, 3, address the need for affordable housing in the village by providing mixed use as well as mixed income housing, 4, complete the Sing Sing Kill Greenway, 5, be designed for development within a floodplain, 6, provide adequate parking, 7, contain community space, and 8, understand that the project should not be a burden to the schools or to the taxpayer. The village received 8 submissions on the project and narrowed the selection down to 1 preferred developer, Wilder-Balter Partners, whom they deemed to be the best fit for the project. Based in Chappaqua, but with roots in Ossining, Wilder-Balter has extensive experience throughout Westchester County, New York State, and New England in the development of mixed-use, mixed-income properties. Notable recent projects include Chappaqua Crossing in Chappaqua, LeConte Place in New Rochelle, and 645 Main Street in Peekskill. The Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce believes that the village has it right with the overall concept and design for this project. Utilizing the benefits of the public-private partnership structure creates a myriad of opportunities. The village opens itself up to grants from the county and state that will be able to incorporate a measure of affordable housing into the project without creating a negative tax burden for the village. The mixed-use aspects of this project will enable the creation of a number of small businesses to serve not only the needs of the site occupants, but the surrounding community as well. This will help the long-needed transformation of the riverfront and revitalization of a long-depressed business area. The community space can not only serve the public use, but can be an asset to the school system over the next few years by providing an alternative school space on an as-needed basis in order to hopefully avoid an expansion or overcrowding of our schools. Although the current design of the parking structure provides space primarily for those in the project, the possibility also exists to add an extra floor and enable additional parking for the community. The completion of the Sing Sing Kill walkway completes one of Ossining's recent recreational attractions while providing greater connectivity of the waterfront to the main street. And lastly, the problems of the brownfield site in a watershed area in a floodplain will finally be remedied. The Greater Ossining Chamber of Commerce believes that this is an economic development that's a win for everyone in the community, and we strongly urge the Ossining Village Board to adopt Resolution K.
You have 5 seconds. You all set? That was perfect timing. Thank you. Next, we have Susie Ross. I will enable you to speak. Welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Nice to see everyone. I am also commenting on item K. My comments are actually a follow-up to an email I sent to the board on April 11th. For those of you who don't know me, I am the chair and co-founder of 10-Year-Old Green Ossining and a former member of the town's EAC. As well, I went back to school full-time this past year and have just completed a year one of a 2-year program as a master's candidate in climate science and policy. I first want to commend the board for recognizing how important wetlands are to our natural environment. They improve water quality, sequester carbon, and provide wildlife habitat. And as we think about sea level rise, it should be noted that they provide a natural buffer to stem some of the flow of rising tides. I also know that the review of the comprehensive plan is another important asset in recognizing and respecting our natural environment, as had been noted by Trustee Lopez. The subject of sea level rise once again was noted in the last one, as I recall, and I will certainly be something that will need to be seriously considered as we look to protect our community from impending effects of a new reality with sea level rise. My comments tonight really are with regard to the W site and potential development. A year ago, this proposal may have made a lot of sense, but we know a lot more now than we did a year ago. The request for proposal went out for the DPW site, and I apologize, that's probably not the right reference to it because I think it's something else, but nevertheless, that proposal I think did make sense probably a year ago. My understanding is that most of you have not seen the climate adaptive designs that have been presented over the past 6 months by the DEC and Cornell University, the Hudson River Estuary Program. These designs were done out of a grant written by the town that included village parcels as an extension of the riverfront. But we know a lot more about sea level rise in Ossining because of the work that has been done. But I also understand that only a few representatives from both the village and the town have been privy to the information and ideas presented in these sessions. What we do know is that by 2080, Water Street will be underwater. We have specific information about this, not just generalized information. And while we are looking to 50 years down the road, we know that coastal storms have increased in intensity and that the frequency of high water events has also increased, especially over the last 20 years. So whether it hits us hard 30 or 50 years from now, or we see various events that challenge our living environment over time down on our riverfront, we are going to basically be leaving another generation to deal with practical planning on that particular site. As for affordable housing, we continue to acknowledge that those historically underserved will remain as such a situation, as you once again burden them with a new issue within a few decades when they can no longer live in that space. It's my opinion that it's fiscally irresponsible to build living space on that site. And while there may be limited options for brownfields, there are other more feasible options that should be considered within the village. In fact, that CAD grant that was awarded has opened up the opportunity to be part of another follow-up grant that could actually provide the opportunity for more responsible design and engineering services to help us think about Water Street differently by folks who have expertise in this particular area. So I want to ask you to really table any decision on this site, preferred developer status or other, until you have each had the opportunity to see CAD presentations and learn more.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Susie.
May I just close on one quick line?
10 seconds.
Please do not discount the value of the research and the science behind some of the amazing ideas and how to rethink our riverfront and the areas directly connected to it by taking the opportunity to see those CAD designs as they come up within the next couple of months at most.
Thank you. All right, next up, Quantel Bazemore. And Quantel, you are able to talk, just unmute yourself. We can't hear you yet.
I am also here to speak, Quantel Bazemore, 11 Ann Street. I'm here to speak about Resolution K. I just want to say I'm so glad to hear the Chamber of Commerce actually agreeing with what I'm about to say. In fact, John Van Steen really makes my comments very easy. I just want to remind the board that as a former trustee, we have, many of us who have served together, we have been talking about ways
in which to provide affordable housing. And while many of us disagree about how to get there, for many of you, including you, Mayor Garrity, we all have agreed at one time that the best possible way or the best possible solution can come with the village-owned property that we own. And so, you know, my understanding of a preferred development status is that it gives the developer 6 months to come up with his plans, and then ultimately there's community input, and then ultimately the board can decide to make a decision. I see this as being one of the optimal times, particularly as we're redoing our comprehensive plans, to see what can be done in this moment with you know, with the developer who has an experience in doing this. Now, I'm not too keen on, you know, the levels of affordability, but I would hate to see Ossining yet again miss another opportunity. Whether it's the creamery, whether it's something else, this is the thing, particularly affordable housing and mixed use housing. These are the things that are built in times of this recession that we're in. These are the things that the governor, in the last recession and even in this recession, will put money out for, right? So, you know, if we say we care about essential workers, people in healthcare, if we say that we care about Black Lives Matter, please understand that Black Lives Matter goes way beyond the scope of just criminal justice, right? We're looking at, you know, as there are comments talking about institutionalized racism, you know, when you think about institutionalized racism, you cannot not have a conversation about housing, because that is probably second in comparison to the criminal justice issues that people of color, Black people here in America face. So I just say, please, this is the moment. We've had a lot of conversations about housing in this community. There's been 4 years, 5 years of stories that we have heard from people not being able to find a place to live. We have done a good share of luxury and market rate development, and this is the opportunity where we can have housing that actually speaks to all levels of our community. And again, as the Chamber of Commerce said, this is actually this potentially could be. I don't know what the numbers work, how the numbers work, but this potentially could be a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bazemore. Kenny Pogue, you're next. I am unmuting you now, or I am allowing you to talk, and now you just unmute yourself, Ms. Pogue, and you can speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
We hear you now. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me. I want to piggyback off of what Quantel said. I think that now, especially, is the time to show the community that you really care. Okay, having affordable housing, mixed income, mixed use property, I think that is great. I'm all for it. It can definitely help someone like me who serves the community but can't afford to live here because I can't find an apartment that I can afford, even with the salary that I have serving the community. And, you know, not for nothing, everyone wants to rah, rah, rah and say Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter this and that, and the injustices, but this would show the community how much you really care and how much housing is important to the community. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pogue. And I am looking to see, we do have some other folks here in the room, and I'll give them a moment to find the raise your hand function if they would like to speak. Is there anybody else before we close the, oh, there's a hand. All right. Mr. Chernoff, welcome. You are able to speak, you just need to unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm unmuted now.
You are, welcome.
Hi, I'd just like to say we own 65 Main Street. This project will partially block the view of the project that we're planning, and I don't care. I think it's a nice looking structure. They brought in a talented architecture firm, and they've proposed a beautiful building. I think it's the right thing for Ossining, and I really encourage you to move forward with it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else who would like to raise their hand? Oh, I see Shandi Speller, Ms. Speller. There you go. You are now able to talk. Just unmute yourself and you may speak.
Hi, this is Sheila Speller, not Shandi.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
No
Excuse me.
problem.
Speller, welcome.
Yes, thank you. 41 Seco Road. And really, I just have a question statement. I'd like to know how the community that is located near the DPW site is going to be informed about a, I guess, public hearing, community exposure about this program. I live in the community and there is so little that I know about this. I have not received anything in the mail. If there's somewhere on the website that I should be directed to so that I can be a little bit more informed, since I do live in this community, I would appreciate that. And also, I do know that you are just at the point of determining the developer. However, there are residents who do live in this neighborhood, and I don't think that they should be disregarded.
Thank you very much, Ms. Speller. And unfortunately, our planner is not here, but if there's anybody on the staff who would like to recap for
Planner
us.
is here.
You're there? Oh, I didn't
I'm
see
here.
All right.
Yeah. So just to give a rundown of the, I guess, the resolution that is taking place today in context of the broader process. Today is just a resolution that will authorize the village to begin the process of coming up with a plan for review. That plan is going to go to the public prior to anything prior to anything being passed. And if the decision is to move forward with that plan, it has to go into environmental review, and there's going to be a lot of community process with that, but there's also an obligation to mail all of the abutters. So you would get certainly stuff in the mail as this process came through moving forward. But again, this is just the beginning of the process. There's still a lot more conversation to be had. And your point is well taken. I will personally make sure that if this does move forward tonight, once the community process begins and it's determined where it takes place, I will get flyers down to that neighborhood for sure to make sure that that people are aware of what's going on.
Okay, we have someone else who has raised their hand. Althema, I'm putting the allowed to talk, and you should, where's it? Let's take a moment here. Yep, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Garrity. As a lifelong resident of Ossining, I hope that whichever developer that we choose really uses the word affordable. I know a lot of times with the index, it's 70,000, 90,000. A lot of people are not making that. And that is also what problems to our housing issue that we have here, overcrowding, or even homelessness and issues. So I would really hope that whoever it is going to really look at the budget and really make it affordable. Because the amount of money that people are making versus the amount of money that the rent is costing is not equal. So I just hope that whoever we choose will definitely take that into consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, let me see if there's anybody else who has raised their hand. I'll give another moment. Last time there was a pause and then we got a few more people. So we'll try to be patient and make sure everybody can be heard. All right, going once, going twice. Last time I'm going to scan through the list. All right, Madam Clerk.
Excuse me. Approval of the minutes, June 3rd, 2020. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of June 3rd, 2020 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Comments on the board?
There has to be a
Madam
better
Clerk.
way.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
B, Approval of the voucher detail report. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated June 17th, 2020 in the amount of $1,060,473.41. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? Madam
I-
Clerk?
All
Oh, yes,
those in
no, go
favor?
ahead. No, hold on. Don't vote yet.
Sorry,
Trustee
real
Kahan,
quick,
what's up?
I just want to thank the staff. You know, there's going through the vouchers, obviously, there's a lot of things that you guys do for us. And, you know, the coding on that one, I know is limited as we said in the past, but it's getting very clear. And I know with the new software that is coming up pretty soon, is even going to be easier for you guys and definitely will be easier for us and to the community to actually see that. But just to, and that's it. I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work that you guys do and
All those
Thank
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
C, resolution concluding the probation period of police officer Pasquale F. Santucci. Whereas by resolution dated October 23rd, 2019, the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees unanimously appointed Pasquale F. Santucci to the position of police officer in the Village of Ossining at an annual salary of $110,452, 4-year salary, effective October 23rd, 2019, which appointment was subject to a probation period of not less than 12 weeks, but not more than 52 weeks. And whereas Pasquale F. Santucci has completed more than 33 weeks of the probationary period, more than 20 weeks of excessive minimum probationary period, and whereas the Chief of Police has recommended to the Board of Trustees that as a result, the Pasquale F. Santucci's exemplary work during his probationary period as a police officer, that the probationary period be concluded effective June 17th, 2020. Now therefore be it resolved that the probation period of Pasquale F. Santucci for his appointment to the position of police officer in the Village of Ossining is concluded effective June 17th, 2020, and it is further resolved that the Village of Ossining's Director of Personnel or designate shall provide Westchester County Human Resources with documents as are required to record the conclusion of the probationary period of Pasquale F. Santucci and reflects his permanent appointment to the position of police officer in the Village of Ossining. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So, second.
Comments on the board? Well, I'll just say thank you very much, Chief, for bringing this opportunity to our attention, and we look forward to having some really terrific candidates to be eligible to become sergeants in our department in the coming years. Madam Clerk.
Oh, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Resolution D, resolution authorizing the village manager to request a 21-day extension of the July 31st, 2020 date of paying village property taxes without penalty or interest. Whereas in pursuant with the section 925-A2 in the real property tax during the state disaster emergency as defined in the section 20 of the executive law, the governor may, by executive order, issue upon the request of the chief executive officer of the county, city, town, village, or school district in the affected area, extend up to a 21 days of final date of paying taxes without interest or penalty in such county, city, town, village, or school district. And whereas on March 7th, 2020, the governor of the state of New York issued Executive Order 202 declaring a state disaster emergency for the entire state of New York as a result of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the declaration of state disaster emergency remains in effect, and whereas the Village Board of Trustees and staff have been looking for ways to assist property owners impacted by the pandemic, now, therefore, be it resolved that the village managers are authorized to, as Chief Executive Officer of the Village of Ossining, to request that the governor issue an executive order extending for 21 days, the final date of paying village property taxes without penalty or interest, such taxes now being due on July 31st, 2020, and be it further resolved that pursuant with section 925-A2 of the real property tax law, if such an extension is granted and any taxes are not paid by the final date so provided, those taxes shall be subject to the same interest and penalties that would have been applied if no extension had been granted. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? I'll just say it's good to see that we are able to take advantage of that many more opportunities to help alleviate some of the pressure for folks who are feeling so much financial difficulty during the pandemic. So I'm pleased to be able to support this. Madam Clerk.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Sorry, my windows are open. Resolution E, authorization and approval to local match for the Green Innovation Grant Program, GIGP grant for the Village of Ossining Indian Brook Water Treatment Facility Project. Whereas by letter dated December 19th, 2019, from the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, the village was notified that consolidated funded application 9442, the Village of Ossining Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant Project was selected, and that the village would receive up to $160,000 in funding for green roof through the Green Innovation Grant Program. And whereas a requirement of the grant is that the Village of Ossining must authorize and approve a minimum of a 10% local match. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees authorizes and appropriates the maximum 10% local match as required in the Green Innovation Grant Program for the Village of Ossining Water Treatment Plant Facility Project, which project will address treatment inefficiencies in the current water treatment facilities and increase the current maximum allowable capacity from 6 MGD to 7 MGD. Under the GIGP, this local match must be at least 10% of the GIGP eligible project cost of $177,778. The source of the required local match shall be provided from water fund accumulated surplus funds. The maximum local match shall not exceed $17,778 based upon the total estimated maximum project cost of $177,778. The village manager may increase this local match through the use of in-kind services without further approval of the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Once again, just great job by our staff going after so many grants. We're really pleased to get so many of them this year that offset incredibly high, important expenses like this. And this is a 90 to 10 match. That's great. Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Corporation Counsel, how much of the next resolution is required? I'll start and you tell me.
First whereas, the first whereas clause and the final two resolved clauses.
Thanks, sir. Finance budget modifications, Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant Capital Project. Whereas by resolution adopted by the Board of Trustees on September 5th, 2018, based on estimates provided by the village's consulting engineer, the board established a capital project in the amount of $38,295,552 for the construction of a new water treatment plant facility that shall be capable of providing up to 7.0 MGD million gallons per day of treated drinking water to be financed by insurance of serial bonds. Therefore, resolved that the capital project budget for the new Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant Facility is modified to reflect as financing sources in New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, WIIA, grant award in the amount of $3 million, and the Green Initiative Grant Program, GIGP, as we just said in the last resolution, grant award in the amount of $160,000, and the transfer of $17,778 available funds from the water fund contingency account as follows. Then further be it resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to transfer the aforementioned $17,778 from the water fund to the capital projects funds as the village's local share in the GIGP grant award. And the increases and decreases to the different amounts are posted on the webpage and will be posted on the door of the municipal building, since we are now still closed until we reopen, and it will also be on the bulletin board by the clerk's office. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Authorization for the village manager to execute a grant agreement with the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation. Resolved that upon review of Corporation Counsel, the village manager of the Village of Ossining is authorized to execute a grant agreement with the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation and any and all other contracts, documents, and instruments necessary to begin to bring about the project, the Village of Ossining Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant Project, and fulfill the village's obligation under the grant agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Acknowledgement of secret determination of amended negative declaration by the Town of Ossining Planning Board as lead agency for the Village of Ossining's Indian Brook Water Treatment Project, Facility Project. Whereas by resolution dated June 20th, 2018, the Town of Ossining Planning Board declared its intent to serve as lead agency pursuant with the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, for the Village of Ossining's Indian Brook Water Treatment Facility Project, which village-owned property is located in the unincorporated portion of the Town of Ossining. And whereas responses for the notice of intent to serve as lead agency were received by Westchester County Department of Planning and New York State Department of Transportation. And whereas by resolution dated September 5, 2018, the Town of Ossining Planning Board accepted lead agency status and found the action to be type 1 pursuant with SEQRA and the regulations of the Department of Environmental Conservation, and issued a negative declaration of no significant negative environmental impact of the project. And whereas by resolution dated August 21st, 2019, the Town of Ossining Planning Board adopted attachment 3 to the environmental assessment form, notice the determination of non-significant and amended negative declaration. And whereas on September 4th, 2019, notice of the negative declaration was filed with the Department of Environmental Conservation Environmental Notice Bulletin as required by regulation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees acknowledge that the secret determination of the amended negative declaration for the Town of Ossining Planning Board. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board?
Yeah, I don't really understand what it is that we're voting on, to be honest. Could somebody explain to me? And
What you are voting on, Trustee Levin, is it's an unusual circumstance because the project is located in a jurisdiction other than the jurisdiction where you would ordinarily be your own lead agency. It is requested that there be a resolution where the Board of Trustees effectively is just acknowledging the Town of Ossining Planning Board's actions, because they are the lead agency. They issued a declaration, a negative declaration, and an amended declaration, and we are being requested to provide a resolution as part of the grant documents which acknowledge what the town did.
And does that acknowledgement go beyond an acknowledgement, or are there liabilities or ramification under what circumstances would that be triggered?
There's no well, we're responsible as the applicant for doing what we're required to do pursuant to the whatever resolution was passed by the Town of Ossining Planning Board. This is merely a recognition that the process has complied with the seeker regulations.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Resolution I. Authorization for the village clerk to temporarily issue refunds to holders of railroad station parking tags for a period of July 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Whereas a result of the governor's executive orders issued in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, many individuals who possess railroad station parking tags find themselves working from home instead of going into their offices. And whereas the village clerk has received requests for refunds from holders of railroad station parking tags, where some of the holders have decided to take early retirement, others are expecting to work for their home for the rest of the calendar year, and still others are not sure of their situation. And whereas the Board of Trustees and the village staff, including the village clerk, have discussed ways to provide refunds for those holders of railroad station parking tags in an equitable manner, now therefore be it resolved that the holders of railroad station who want a I want to make that perfectly clear, who want a refund shall request the refund from the village clerk in an email between June 1st and June 30th, 2020, and let it further be resolved that the refund will be for the period of July 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020, and the amount of the refund will be determined by the amount paid for the tag. And therefore, resolved, holders of railroad station parking tags must turn in their 2020 tag no later than June 30th, 2020 to receive the refund. And be it further resolved that those tag holders who intend to return to commuting in 2021, a renewal for the tag will be sent out by the village clerk in the usual course, and those tag holders who indicated the intent to give up their tag permanently, those holders will be removed from the village clerk's list of tag holders. And therefore be it resolved that the village clerk shall continue to offer railroad station parking tags for those commuters seeking a tag. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? I would just say thank you very much to the clerk for bringing to our attention this opportunity to again alleviate some of the burden that Ossining residents are feeling. In this case, folks who used to travel to the city all the time and needed a parking tag, and right now are finding themselves in a different circumstance, and giving them a little bit of a break through the end of the year with hopes that they'll be back at it in the new year is a thoughtful idea. Thanks for bringing the opportunity to our attention.
And it's
Madam
good
Clerk.
that we get to help those people that are taking early retirement, because some people.
Yes, yes. Every little bit helps right now.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Excellent. Okay. J, authorizing the village manager to issue a request for a proposal for the mobility and parking management study. Resolved that upon review of the Corporation Counsel, the village manager is authorized to issue a request for proposal for a mobility and parking management study. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again?
Aye.
5 ayes. Okay. Preferred developer status, former DPW site, Water Street. Whereas the village is the owner of a certain real property bordered on Main Street to the south, Central Avenue to the north, and Water Street to the west, the property having the following tax identification numbers: 89.19-6-22, 89.19-6-26, 89.19-6-27, 89.19-6-28, and 89.19-6-29. And whereas in the public interest and with the authority of the New York State Village Law Section 1-102, the village determined that this property is not needed for public purposes and wishes to investigate conveying the property for redevelopment and work collaboratively, with the developer to redevelop the property in accordance to the community's vision. And whereas on July 2019, the village issued a request for site concepts and developer qualifications for the property, which document detailed the following guiding principles. A, creates affordable residential opportunities attractive to the range of income levels in the village and all generations. B, executes a key policy strategy in Ossining's 2017 Housing Needs Assessment, provide a deeper and broader level of affordability requirements for new housing development to ensure access to affordable housing for lower income households and that support mixed income housing. C, creates a space for commercial opportunities and community programming. D, provides a public amenity that facilitates a pedestrian connection between Upper Main Street and Station Plaza. E, provides public access along the Brook, Sing Sing Kill, and make a connection with the Sing Sing Kill Greenway. And F, encourages additional development in the area. And G, employs modern materials and sustainable practices. And H, pedestrian friendly. And whereas the village now desires to formalize a relationship with one of the responding developers to provide for a period of exclusivity to allow for and facilitate due diligence in further actions towards the finalization of the acceptable plan for redevelopment and the drafting of a term sheet. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby authorizes the village manager to enter into a letter of agreement designating Wilder Bolter Partners Incorporated with offices at 480 Bedford Road, Chappaqua, New York, 10514 as the preferred developer for a period of 180 days and authorizes execution of any other necessary documents to facilitate the developer's due diligence efforts and authorizes negotiation to redevelop of the redevelopment plan and the drafting of a term sheet with all documents being subject to review and approval by Corporation Counsel. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I'd like to comment that I am recusing myself from discussion or voting on this, so I will momentarily turn off my screen.
I just want to reiterate that it's a 6-month time frame. And Stuart, what happens at the end of 6 months if we don't come to an agreement of some sort?
Then the developer status lapses and you can go to a different developer or think of different ways you wish to develop the property.
Okay, and the 6 months, just so we're clear, is, I'm just asking some questions. I know we've had a lot of discussions, we've discussed a lot of different things. 6 months, you'll date it in the contract, which we will then get a chance to look at again. Is that what's happening?
Well, there would be an approval if there's ultimately a land acquisition and development agreement. That would be something that would be subject to your approval to allow the village manager to sign. And clearly, we would keep the board fully informed as to what the discussions are, specifically the discussions of whatever is in the term sheet. So yes.
Okay, and that follows with public meetings and seeker and all that stuff.
Seeker would come basically, after the fact when they actually, put in their, application to construct. We're not at, ultimately there will have to be seeker because this will go before the planning board with regard to that, but we're not at the seeker stage yet.
Okay, so the seeker happens not during the 6 months period, but after that 6 months period.
That is correct. They wouldn't do seeker until they would have an agreement, which would then allow them to then proceed with going before the planning board with their plans and their application for site plan approval and whatever variances they might need.
Okay. So those were my questions. Are there other comments or questions from members of the board since the mayor's recused herself? Other trustees, comments, questions?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just had a quick question. I guess this will be more like for probably Karen or Jamie or even Stuart at this point. If we vote this in favor, move forward with 108 days, things that we don't have, something that we always we've been talking about signing and we notify the community members and what's going on in here. I would like to propose very similar to what was done on that's on Crest project.
Hold on, Manny, somebody's got to put themselves on mute. There's just
It's
a
Bob
lot
and Sue.
of,
If you two can mute
Sorry.
yourselves, please. Thank you.
Manny, if you could repeat that last sentence, I apologize for interrupting.
Thank you. Now, I would like to propose to the rest of the board and probably to the staff, if this resolution passes and we choose the developer to have some ideas for this particular site or to kind of move forward, I would like to propose something very similar to what Hudson Crest did for us. It was a rendering of the description of the project. There's times that, sometimes when we put flyers or we do mailings, the public is never, sometimes they just put it away. They don't see that information every day. But if there was a big poster in this particular site where it says, this could be here, please get engaged, or we need to hear your feedback. I would like to see if this will be possible for us to do that, again, if this resolution moves forward.
And you're talking about something that gets handed out, or you're talking about the big 4x8 board up on the site?
4x8 board that is very similar, again, with the rendering that is on State Street side.
Right. Now, that would happen when? Is that after land acquisition, or is that?
No. That I will, after this resolution, again, if the resolution moves forward with the preferred developer, I would like the preferred developer to actually do something on that site that reflects the proposed project for this particular area.
All right. I agree 100%. It's just that, when can that be done? Stuart, is there a timeline? Because it's still a village property. So are we granting them permission to do that, or does this have to happen in some sort of timeline?
No, I think that we can, Trustee Fritchie, have discussions with Mr. Bolter about, as Trustee Quezada alluded to with Hudson Crest, put up a sign, large enough sign at the project, perhaps future development, and put in what it is and show a picture of it. There would be no problem. In terms of, we can enter into a very short letter agreement with them that they're allowed to put that up there. So that's
all. I'm fine with. I think the idea is great, and it's information that's out there. I just didn't know if there was a timeline, or we can grant them permission to do it, like you said. I'm good with that.
We certainly can.
Okay.
I would like to, though, make sure that on that there is bold lettering that says if you have comments or feedback. I don't want it to look like this look and feel is approved and this is what's coming up and being built, because that's what oftentimes is just a regular layperson. When I see renderings, I drive in the city, whatever, I'm assuming that those are renderings that have somehow been approved exactly as it looks in that picture or close to it, whether it's a parking deck or whatever. That's not actually what's happening here, though. This is just an idea that the public will then comment. So somewhere it should say if you have comments or feedback on this, BOT at whatever, so that there is some loop and an opportunity to actually get real-time feedback directly from the public who's interested in it.
I agree, and that I believe anything that goes up, obviously, if this resolution moves forward, I would like that to, if we get into an agreement with the developer, it has to be approved by us before anything goes out. Yes.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
You want to actually look at what he's doing,
Of
or
course.
she, whatever, to make sure that that we're going to approve the copy and all that is what you're suggesting.
That would be
Right.
my proposal, yes.
That's your ask? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I don't know how other people
Yeah,
feel.
I'm fine. I'm
Trying to
fine
look
with
at the gallery here, but I'm having a hard time on an iPhone.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. Anyone else have any? Thank you, Manny. Was that it from you?
Yes, that's it for me.
Okay. Trustee Fritchie, any comments? You're
No,
not
I'm good.
obligated, just asking.
No, I'm good right now.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just say a few words. I'm really grateful for the folks that came to speak at the beginning about this resolution. I think that community support is integral to making this project move forward. There are a number of constituencies that I think would really benefit from this project, some of which we have already named, folks that would benefit from affordable housing, having a community space in that area, having some retail. All of that I think is absolutely right. And there are some others as well. There are boats that come in to the docks there that stay overnight, and having a path to be able to go into Main Street, one more piece of real estate that has something that would attract them toward moving toward Main Street, I think would be super beneficial. Having people that come in to the village with Sing Sing Prison Museum and giving them more of a reason to continue moving deeper into Main Street, and ultimately doing what I think aligns with so many of the goals that we have in the RFQ and the conversations we've had in the past. So I'm totally in favor of moving forward.
So, thank you. I'm just going to say that my greatest interest is to listen to, as Ms. Speller said, with the community, the people that live there and will live with whatever is built. I want to make it clear that this is a beginning of a process where there will be lots of public engagement. I remember Trustee Lopez a couple of months ago saying, where is the public engagement in this process? And how do we do that? And how do we bring the public in? And how do we bring all the public in? There are environmental concerns, which were stated as well today, which is of great interest. There were things that I was not aware of a year ago and that are interesting. There are changes that occur every few months in the past few months. So really interesting time to do this. I'm in support of moving this forward, but I am looking at it as a process that has to be done well. Whenever you look at using public space, this is not a private developer. So while I appreciate Mr. Bazemore's comments about we've had a lot of market rate development, which is 100% accurate and true, most of which is private developers. It's their property. They do as they do, that they have rights as well. This is public. And I think all of us agree that we are going to be very careful to make sure that we hear all the voices on this, because it belongs to the public and we are the holders of that trust. So it has my support at this step in the process. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak before we move forward? Not seeing. I'm not the host, so I have to flip through, but I think we're good. Okay, where are we, Madam Clerk?
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? 4 in favor. Excellent.
Right, and 1 recusal, right? Is that how
Yeah.
we're documenting that?
Yep.
Okay,
We'll always.
thank you.
Yep. We're up to visitor.
I think the mayor is back on. Yes, Mayor?
Yes.
I am back on.
Okay.
Well, we're up to visitor recognition.
Thank you. I am looking now to see if anyone is going to raise their hand. Some people are signing off. I think they were just waiting to hear that vote. And Mr. Garrity, I will enable you to talk. Just one moment. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mr. Garrity, and you may speak for 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you now. Welcome.
For the last 3 months, businesses have been on pause from the COVID epidemic. And New York State has created initiatives to help us out. The sidewalk cafe permitting is one of them, which has brought substantial relief. I've reached out to the members of the board as well as the staff, and although you've done a wonderful job patting yourselves on the back this evening, talking about how you've helped local businesses, we have a street frontage that we would like to utilize in its full capacity. And after several requests, we've been told that we will not be allowed to take advantage of the full impact of New York State's initiative. And it's unclear to me as to why Sinks and Kill Brewery is the only business that is not able to use its full and entire street frontage. You mentioned earlier about compliance, and what we have seen is the lack of compliance throughout the village. We have done everything to maintain compliance, and yet we, again and again, are the only business that has been restricted in its ability to access the revenue potential of its full street frontage, which we pay a great deal in rent in order to have. And as you know, during this epidemic, costs have increased and revenue has decreased, and we're going to continue to have decreased taproom sales throughout this process. We're just about to enter phase 3, and the guidance on phase 3 is limiting, and we won't see guidance of phase 4 until shortly before that takes effect. So again, I'm asking, what is the issue with us taking our street frontage in order to support our local economy, not just us, but we're turning away other businesses that their customers are coming in here with food.
That's your 10-second warning.
What's that?
You have a 10-second warning.
All right. So it seems to boil down to sawhorses, 7 sawhorses, and I can't get a commitment as to whether that's truly the case or not, and I can't get any information as to what specifically is the issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Garrity. This was something that we're very sensitive to the needs of businesses in our community. We had some unique issues on Spring Street. While we made concerted efforts with all the businesses, including yours, to try to work out solutions, and Jaime was able to talk about some of his experience working on the bid in Yonkers, one of the challenges is on Spring Street, it's a narrow street. Right now, the way that the parking was organized, when we had the Chief Sylvester look at this, when we had our engineer Paul Fraioli look at this, we had to acknowledge that this is a very narrow street that's challenging, particularly since it's now 2 ways instead of 1 way. There's concerns about, first of all, we don't have extensive amount of barriers. We just don't have them. Right now, we do have some additional ones on order, but we have to keep a certain reserve because they're used for street closings, they're used for emergencies. This is not typically what we use them for. Usually it's used in a construction scenario, or for street closing, or for an emergency. The challenge is that the spaces in front of where you have them now allow for a slow access of 2 cars passing. Part of it is where the handicap spaces that is not typically used across the street, and the fact that then you don't have extended parking because of the police station parking. Extending it 5 5 spots, which is something that we've discussed and we have communicated, creates a long distance and a narrow sight line on a street that's difficult to pass, where we're now putting pedestrians, not cars. So usually it's a clipped mirror that we're worried about there, but now it's pedestrians that are separated by a barrier that, if it is hit by a car, is not that secure. It is a risk, and this is what our engineer has spoken about, as has our police chief, and I will like Kevin to talk about this too, because this was a pretty exhaustive internal conversation.
Sure, I will. So the spaces that are blocked right now are pretty much directly across from our driveway. So it's a space where, when cars are passing, they generally have that extra space of not having parking on the other side of the street. In order to take that whole frontage, I have concerns about, first off, those barriers, although only a couple of inches, do go into the road beyond where the spaces are. We have a beeline bus that lines up on Academy Place and makes that left turn to go north on Spring several times a day. And if anybody ever looks at Spring Street between Academy Place and Broad Avenue with cars parked on both sides of the road, you'd see how incredibly difficult it is for cars, trucks, buses to get through there. If you look in, particularly in the morning when it's busy, when there's cars on both sides, when the garbage truck comes, traffic comes to a complete stop in order to allow the larger trucks to go through. We also deal with a significant number of complaints from residents who say that their driveways get blocked, and that's because of the street being so narrow there. So when asked my opinion, I think that taking the whole frontage, and particularly with the courts to be opening up soon, and they're predicted to be opening up as many as 4 or 5 days a week for court sessions in order to get caught up on parking, traffic, and criminal trials, and a lot of civil issues. We're expecting the need for parking and that those spots are going to be taken. I don't know what day that's going to be coming up, but last I spoke to the judges, they were expecting it any time now. So in my professional opinion, it would not be feasible to take up that entire side with people walking in the roadway unless we took the parking out on the other side of the street in order to widen the road. And I don't know that we can eliminate all the parking in front of the police station, as it would deny access to both our police station and the courthouse.
Okay, obviously this is something that I can't personally comment on, because the Mr. Garrity is actually my husband, and that is his business. Because we're in a format of, he got to speak for 3 minutes, asked a question, and the staff was kind enough to take time to respond to his question, but it's not a back and forth. I would ask that the elected officials please follow up with Mr. Garrity as he has requested. Are there any other participants who would like to comment? I will check for any raised hands. We still have some folks in the room here, the virtual room. I'll give it a couple more moments. Looking at the list. Seeing no one. Madam Clerk.
Do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session for the matters related to personnel?
And for real property, please.
I'm sorry. Oh.
And for real property.
Yeah, I heard you. And for real property.
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
With that, we say thank you very much for joining us for this Wednesday evening. And actually 9:42, that's not bad for us. So of course, we're going to executive session. Do you enjoy your evening? A bunch of the staff members get to enjoy the rest of their evening, and we're heading over to another Zoom room. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.